To help you get started and starting to design your process, what we want to do is we want to think about learning as a progression. So oftentimes we think about daily lessons and we plan those lessons out and we kind of hope for the best outcome at the end. What we want to do now is as a thoughtful learning designer, and when I call teachers learning designers because they design a process. They're designing a process in order to get a desired outcome. And so what we have to do is we have to work on what we call backwards a concept called backwards design. So we have to identify, okay, what our end goal is, right? And then we have to determine how many days that we actually have to reach that goal. And so if our goal is that we have a unit of instruction, and we often that should be familiar for most people. If we have a unit of instruction, or in high school they may call it chapters, if we have a unit of instruction that may last 15 to 20 days, and I have to develop the three skill sets for the 21st century, the first thing I have to do is I have to set the standard. First of all, how many days is it? Do I have? So it's a timeline. The next thing that I need to do is I need to also to talk about what types of topics, skills, and techniques do I need students to have? What is that? Am I introducing it? Am I developing for proficiency or developing for mastery? That's the next thing that I have to ask myself. So when you're going through this part, what you want to do is you want to identify the timeline in which you have for each unit. But then you also want to do is to ask yourselves, what topics and skills and techniques do I expect students to develop? And then with my process. And then I have to ask myself, am I developing it for, just introducing it? Am I expecting students to be proficient at it, meaning they can do it 100% of the time on their own? Or do I expect students to master it, where they can do it 100% on their own, but also apply it to other real life scenarios? So, there's different levels of learning, right? Deep learning. Now, the next thing is that once we do that, okay, once we establish the standard and so forth, then the next question is, how are we going to assess that? How do we know that we've met that standard? And then how do we actually communicate those things as well? So we're going to get into what we call formative and summative assessment. And some of you may know that formative is more informal assessment. Summative is more formal, like a test that you give at the end of the unit. But what we'd like to do is, instead of just knowing if they passed or failed at the end, what we'd like to do is assess on a regular basis, called formative, which is more informal, to give students an idea where they're at and make daily progress towards the end of their every single day towards the goal. So as a teacher, you're giving them continuous feedback, and they're getting continuous feedback based on their assessment results, and then we give them the opportunity to correct those things along the way. Our goal is to create a master, student. Well, mastery just doesn't happen. Learning is a progression. There's a lot of ups and downs. It doesn't always go in a straight up trajectory. Sometimes there's failure we can learn from and so forth. But we have to be able to know what our timeline is, what our targets are, or the standards that we have, and those are the topics, skills, and techniques we want them to know. And then we also have to be able to have an assessment, from that. Are we meeting those targets and those things along the way? So, and then we also want to know what do we expect from students? And so our assessment should be aligned to what we expect, and then what we want to cover. And so our expectational level of deep learning is, are they very at surface? Are they at proficiency, or are they at mastery level? Which is important when we're analyzing them in our process.